they become.
Oh, geez. All these things going beding at me. Why did my computer go beding through the... Oh, because the speakers are set to speakers. That's probably it. Settings.
4.5 years, boys. Professionals, aren't we?
Shut up.
Hey, it's what adds character to the show.
This is the AT Banter Podcast, a balanced and entertaining look at assistive technology, accessibility, and its importance in people's lives. Join Rob Minot, Ryan Fleury, and Steve Barclay as they banter with people around the world about anything and everything regarding assistive technology and the disability community. Now, on with the show.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter.
Banter.
Woo! Professional this time.
Woohoo!
Oh, yeah.
Hey, my name is Rob Minot, and joining me in the room today, Mr. Ryan Fleury
Hello, everybody.
and Mr. Steve Barclay.
Howdy doody.
How are you guys doing?
Oh, just better and better.
Are you?
Yeah, I was
Oh, yeah.
I was a little concerned earlier because our buildings are being pressure washed today, so it's like, oh, the mic's going to pick up everything, but they did ours earlier this morning, so we're good.
Excellent.
Yep.
Good stuff.
I don't know, guys. I'm feeling fried.
How are you? Why are
Yeah.
you fried?
Oh, this whole gala thing, man.
Gala's over.
Oh, yeah, it's done. You're in relax mode now, aren't you?
Oh, hell no. As it turns out, there's more to do after gala than there was before. Yeah, they didn't tell me that in the brochure.
That's
Let me tell
funny.
you. But it was good. Yeah, we had for people who don't know what we're talking about. The organization that I work for had a big online gala this weekend, and it was something that we've been working towards for about 2 months now. And yeah, it was a culmination of all that hard work, and it was great. It went really well for an online event because online events are weird.
Yeah, and I think you got to give them a plug. The organization is Blind Beginnings. Their website is blindbeginnings.ca. And check out their podcast called Limitless. It's fantastic.
Just don't like it better than our podcast.
That's right. Come back, please.
They have the advantage of they have all that young blood in there.
That's right. They're not jaded yet.
Energy, and they're not jaded and cynical. So just a segment of our audience, they wouldn't like that. I think many of our audience are grumpy old people like us.
Yep.
Hey, Ryan,
Rob,
what are we doing today?
today we are talking with Tamara Vrooman, who is the CEO of the Vancouver International Airport, about inclusivity and diversity.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. She is a big player in the fight for inclusion around here. She's been fighting the good fight for many years. So we're really lucky to actually have her and to be able to talk to her for a little bit about all about inclusion and why it's important.
And she joined YVR from my credit union, Van City. So she's pretty lucky that she's not with Van City right now, because I'd take her to task on what they're doing for visa upgrades, because it's making me mental.
Well, and she might have been the person to talk to. She was the president of Van City.
That's right. I want to talk to her replacement.
Although very interesting time to become the head of the Vancouver airport
Mhm.
during. So I'm sure that's a whole other set of challenges, but that's for a different podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys, you want to talk a little bit of news before we launch into that?
Sure, why not?
I saw an article across my desk yesterday that I thought was interesting. Apparently, we're having an election here, and
Provincially.
provincially, yes.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot of news of that ilk around these days, and this is one of them. But I thought it was interesting. So it's not super interesting for those people who are not in British Columbia, but bear with us. There'll be something for you too, dear listener, soon enough. But apparently the BC New Democrats are promising to introduce a comprehensive piece of legislation ensuring accessibility for people with disabilities within the first sitting of the legislature. It was a campaign announcement from the NDP. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
That would be good, if they did, but it really depends on what the meat is on the bones, right?
Yeah, and that's unfortunately that part of it, they of course not really saying. All they've really said is that more than 9,000 people have already been involved in consultations with the previous government about the issue. It was this legislation was actually going to hit the legislature in the fall, but of course COVID-19 changed all that. Selina Robinson, the NDP's candidate for Coquitlam Millardville, said that the legislation will cover both the private and public sectors dealing with issues including housing, transportation, employment, and the delivery of services. She said the legislation would be designed to ensure people with disabilities have equitable access and care. All very vague.
Indeed. They were actually asked recently, I don't remember which disability organization it was now off the top of my head, but they were asked specifically if they would increase funding for people with disabilities, because the disability amount that people get in the province right now is below the poverty line. And since the COVID epidemic hit, people have been receiving an additional $300 a month, I believe it is.
That's right.
And that has been helpful, obviously, for a lot of people. But they were asked if they would make that permanent, and their answer was pretty waffly.
Yeah.
They didn't actually come out and say, yes, they would increase the amount. They just said that they would do something appropriate. So I think there's a lot of vague politics going on right now. They clearly are not putting any real meat on the bones at this point. So we'll see what comes. But, one, they have to be elected. And there's, some doubt about that. For example, Selina Robinson, who you mentioned, she in Millardville, that's been a Liberal riding for years. The likelihood of her flipping that riding is really poor.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing from people on the ground is a lot of people are really angry at them calling a snap election when we have, or when we're supposed to have fixed election dates in British Columbia. And they called it in the middle of a pandemic. So I think that's going to come back and bite them right in the bum. But we'll see.
Yeah, that's really what it sounds like to me too. It just sounds like this is they're putting this out there because it's election time and they want to get that vote. So they bring this up without really actually saying what they're talking about, because it sounds like it's legislation that was going in anyways. And you're absolutely right. The Green Party, has been talking about that, making that $300 a month top up to those people who are on disability and income assistance permanent. While NDP, they've been pretty quiet about it, and they continue to be pretty quiet about it. So, it does sound like just sort of positioning, and they're just putting something out there to have something out there, for this issue. But it doesn't sound like there's really any meat to this at all.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of balls in the air right now. But on the other side of the aisle is the Liberal Party, who's campaigning on the idea of getting rid of the provincial sales tax. Dropping the provincial sales tax down to zero. Now, I don't know how you make that promise as a government when we are spending massive amounts of money on our COVID response, and still maintain the social services that we have as they are now.
Right.
So that side I see pretty worrying, because if anybody's likely to win this election other than the NDP, it's probably them. So little concerning.
You don't have a money tree in your backyard like the rest of us?
I do not.
Huh. We should.
Can I take a cutting off yours?
No, I think we should get you one. Yeah.
Well, hey, this could tie into actually something that we might talk to Tamara about, but you guys want to talk a little bit about Microsoft for a second?
What would you like to talk about with Microsoft for a second?
They recently released their 2020 Diversity and Inclusion Report, which I thought was interesting. I thought that it's interesting that they do this. So they just release all the numbers of their employees. They break down exactly what demographics they are currently hiring. So that includes, women and other ethnicities and people with disabilities. So according to a survey of Microsoft employees in the US, 6.1% self-identify as having a disability. So, and they do go on in the report to say that, obviously that's a number that they're not, they're not happy with. There's room for improvement, but still 6.1%, I guess not too bad. But what I find interesting is that, they're being very transparent about this. And I think that that's a really interesting way to approach this. And I'm not really sure who else is doing things like this.
Yeah, Microsoft has had a big push on hiring people with disabilities and a big push on accessibility of their products for the last couple of years. So, I think a company the size of Microsoft is definitely taking the initiative and hiring qualified people with disabilities to work for them and see the value in that. The experience they can bring, is varied.
Well, and I think that it's always, it's good. It's good to be transparent about these things because, and I don't know that a lot of companies do this, would actually release employment stats like this in order to show what they're doing and that, they're putting their money where their mouth is. I think it's a really positive move. And I would hope that a lot of the other really big corporations would do similar things to this.
Yeah, and I think, we've mentioned it before on the podcast, but I think being in this pandemic has made a lot of companies open their eyes and see that people can actually do some jobs from home, which makes some people maybe with mobility issues a lot more viable an asset to work for them.
Well, and the other interesting thing that the report goes on to talk a little bit about that we don't really talk about too much on the podcast, but it's definitely a thing is things like caregivers. So for example, for an employee that maybe works for Microsoft that has a family member that requires a caregiver and they've lost that caregiver due to COVID, that puts that pressure on that family member in order to, because they don't have a caregiver anymore for that family member. So they may have to do that themselves. So, they have programs in place to help those employees as well that are affected by things like disability. So, there's this whole trickle down effect of COVID that COVID is having on employees that you may not think about right off the top of your head. It's really interesting. And given that, we're probably looking at living in this state for at least the next year, it's really interesting to see how this is all shaping out.
Yeah, we're seeing a real repositioning of the labor force and attitudes around the labor force. And to like we've said many times, this has really been a boon to a lot of people with disabilities because, the limitations that were being put on their jobs before are not necessarily there anymore.
Well, and again, and not only that, the report does also talk about, things like the company providing things like ergonomic furniture for people who have to work at home, different types of equipment. I'm sure assistive technology is in that bundle somewhere as well. So yeah, I think Microsoft they're really showing leadership in that space. I think that a lot of other companies, I think, should really be paying attention to and hopefully following suit.
Okay, well, I have to throw this in. I don't know the total number of Microsoft employees, but what's 6% of 250,000? Not a lot of people.
About 12,000.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't do math.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how many employees Microsoft has, but
12, 15,000,
yeah. So get on Microsoft,
I think.
And their tools are getting better and better all the time.
Did you see the article that I sent over on Slack earlier?
Oh yeah, I did.
Guinness?
Yeah,
It's the end of the world as we know it.
why would they do that? Why would Guinness launch the first alcohol-free beer?
I don't think it's the first.
It's not the first.
No.
It's in no ways the first alcohol-free beer, but it is the first alcohol-free Guinness.
Right.
Which is just wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
Just wrong.
I've had Guinness. About the only saving grace for Guinness is that it has alcohol.
Ouch, them's fighting words.
I mean, it's just not. I'm like a Corona. I'm lightweight. I can't deal with these really dark, really. I don't know what the word is.
Heavy.
Yeah, heavy beers like that puts me under the table, sir.
Guinness, Lord Guinness, who of course was the owner of Guinness, was a member of the British House of Lords, and he was famous for never saying a word in the House of Lords. And at some point during his career in the House of Lords, somebody had brought up dubious medical claims made about various products out there, and he said something to the effect of, for example, people say that Guinness is good for you, and Lord Guinness, for the first time in his career in the House of Lords, stood up and said, "Guinness is good for you," and sat down and never spoke again. It's a good story. Anyways. Yeah. But yes, de-alcoholized Guinness. If ever there was a sign of the end times, that's got to be it. Hi everyone, this is Steve from Canadian Assistive Technologies, and this is a shameless plug. We've been working hard to find less expensive Braille products so we can make Braille available for more people. We can now say that we have Canada's most comprehensive lineup of inexpensive Braille solutions, including the 20-cell Braille Me from Innovision, the soon-to-be-released 40-cell Orbit Braille display from Orbit Research, as well as the world's least expensive multi-line Braille reader, the Canute from Bristol Braille. You can have a look at them all on our website at www.canastech.com.
Joining us now is Tamara Vrooman.
Hello, Tamara. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
All right. Well, hey, listen, we want to really thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy day, I'm sure, to talk to us. And I know we only have you for a limited time only. So let's just launch into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
Maybe we should just start off by talking a little bit about what is inclusion to you and why is it important?
Yeah. So inclusion to me is really about making sure that, in my case, businesses and organizations have the value and the benefit of diverse experience and perspectives in everything we do. Everything from executive decision making to day-to-day operational decision making. We benefit when we have broad experience, and that broad experience tends to be best when it's not academic. It's not from a book or people said, but it's their lived experience. And so that lived experience being brought into our organizations and us as an organization doing what we need to encourage and curate and cultivate that lived experience and the validity of it makes our organizations stronger, frankly. And so I feel good about it because it's the right thing to do from a society point of view, but it's absolutely also the right thing to do from a business and a performance point of view.
That kind of ties into the next question, which is, what is the business case for inclusivity and accessibility that you sort of use?
Yeah, when I talk about the business case, let me say skeptics that say, well, diversity is an extra cost, and this is the narrative I hear. I wouldn't mind doing it, but I'm just not in a place where my business can afford that right now. I usually say this: well, look, you're spending money on talent every single day, and then they nod, and I say, are you getting the best value from that spending? They say, oh yeah, well, we have good people. And I say, I'm sure you do, but are you also getting the benefit of of those insights and that perspective that can de-risk your decision making, that can future-proof because they're thinking about the way that you make decisions. They're thinking about perspectives that you might not have thought about. They're seeing and bringing a different experience. And then the rest of your employees are also getting the benefit of that experience in their daily work. And so you end up sort of punching way above your weight in terms of the quality of decision making and execution that comes when you have a more diverse workforce. And that diverse workforce must be inclusive and get to sort of the final point around belonging. They feel that their perspectives are welcome and encouraged. That's the only way it really works inside an organization. And when you do that, I have found absolutely that our performance improves. We make better decisions. We're thinking about risks more creatively. We see opportunities better than our competition does. And we had the stats in the case of Vancity, and we certainly at YVR, to prove it, because the more diverse our workforce is, the better our financial results.
And do you find that it's a pretty easy sell?
They get the logic of it. So when I just talked about there, but then it's always like, show me the proof. And I was very fortunate in the case of Vancity to say, I'll show you proof. When we started to really embrace diversity, including reconciliation as well, into our workforce and our practices, and it wasn't just ticking a box, but really embedding it into our decision-making processes right across the organization, then our results improved, and I had the math to show them. So that's where they then start to talk to me about the how. What does that mean in terms of hiring, or what did your HR practices need to look like? And then we start to get into it a little bit more about the tools that actually put that into effect.
So, it's interesting. We were just talking earlier about Microsoft just released they released a report about their own inclusion efforts, and released all the statistics and stuff. Do you find that type of transparency, especially when it's a larger organization like that, can really help the cause? Absolutely.
What gets measured gets done, and I also think that it's important that we measure things that aren't going as well, so that we can understand why and what we can do about it. I mean, you'd never think of being a business or a corporation and not producing your financial results. If you really think that diversity is one of the things that improves your culture, and your culture therefore improves your performance and your efficiency, why wouldn't you report on that? I know that there's some challenges around designating and how we label. I think that's a different issue than reporting results.
Well, and you've been sort of involved in this for so long. Do you find that when companies like Microsoft really make this push towards accessibility and inclusion, do you really see the results on the ground?
I mean, I'm not inside Microsoft, so I don't know what it means truly for the inside of their business, but certainly it gives, it amplifies the dialogue, right? And so, well, hey, Microsoft is doing it, so other people are saying, well, if they're doing it, maybe I should be curious about it, because they're obviously a large and successful corporation, and so if they figured it out, maybe I can figure it out. So I think what it does is it invites more of the conversation and more interest in exploring the topic. Maybe the way I would put it is makes it a little bit more mainstream from a business point of view, and I think that's healthy, as long as the results are true and credible, and it's not a PR campaign that can of course do damage to this work, but as long as it's credible and valid, then I think they can really help amplify. And I don't need to have ownership of it. The more voices that are talking about this and moving us in the right direction, the better.
So how has COVID changed things? Has it altered the emphasis in the fight for inclusion? Has it made it easier, or has it made it harder?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. I have two perspectives on it. The first perspective is, in the beginning, when we went from working, talking about having everybody work from home maybe 3 years from now to doing it in 3 days. And we were having, we made sure that people had ergonomic chairs and accommodations for everyone, actually, because it's not good for anybody to be, sitting at their dining room table with their phone on top of a stack of books, doing Zoom calls or Teams meetings 8 hours a day. That actually the ability that had a leveling effect in some ways, because for some of our employees with accessibility and mobility challenges, not having to commute to work is a huge improvement in productivity and just participation in daily work. For those who had not the ideal home space, there was I think some work that we had to do right away to get those ergonomic pieces in place, but we were more or less able to do that. And then the key was making sure that the isolation, some of the things we found again with people with diverse lived experiences from a mobility and accessibility point of view, and then increasingly, unfortunately, diversity in the form of people with lived experience for racism. We found that some of our Asian staff, for example, felt uncomfortable going outside and going on public transit because of the early racist connotations of the origin of the pandemic and. So there was a lot that we had to talk about, actually, and things that we had good conversations about what we needed to do to provide supports for people to do their work in a more holistic, whole person way, because people were working at home and we were in their homes. We had to contemplate that better. So I actually think in the early times, there's been some improvement in how we think about employee well-being, how we think about employee supports, because we were looking at people, as I said, not as employees in the workplace, but in situ, if you like, in their own homes. The piece that has been more of a challenge, though, is that I really recognize in our case at YVR that while we made great progress around diversity, we didn't institutionalize it in the best sense of the word. And so we didn't make diversity and inclusion and belonging considerations as powerful as financial or collective bargaining considerations. And so therefore, when we unfortunately had to lay off a significant portion of our staff because our sector has been so hard hit, all of the diversity hires and gains that we have made went first. And so that says to me that we didn't actually complete our work. We didn't embed inclusion and belonging. We did in an intentional way, but we didn't do it in a systemic way that actually made sure that the tools and the things that we use to actually govern and allocate resources and things that make an organization work, that it was embedded. So we're now doing work, for example, in our collective agreement. How does the concept of inclusion coexist with the concept of seniority, for example? Those are things that we need to fix, and if we're going to really get this right going.
Wow, so it sounds like it's really been a learning experience all across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. COVID has been very difficult, obviously, for very many people. But it's also been a very forceful teacher, and we've really taken that challenge head on, because we know that there will be a future post-COVID, and we need to make sure that we're better.
It's interesting. I mean, I know that when we've talked about things like workplace inclusion and inclusive hiring practices, We often just think of, oh, you know what, you pitch it to the company, and you buy any sort of assistive technology that employee may use, and that's it. But it sounds like there's so much more to it. Right from like altering sort of the workplace environment as well. And I didn't really consider that. Is that a big part of that component as well?
Absolutely, and that's why I think that the advocates in this area, and I absolutely have believe they're correct. We've moved our language from diversity, ticking a box, filling a quota, to inclusion. Well, how are those folks embraced and welcomed in our organization? To belonging. Okay, well, do they feel that it's actually the onus of proof is the other direction? It's not, hey, I'm the employer and I can show you what we've been able to do with respect to accessibility and diversity. You actually have to ask those folks, what is their experience? Is their lived experience part of the way that we make decisions? Do they see themselves in the way that we would for any employee? But it requires us to think about the culture of our organizations, because at the end of the day, as a CEO, I of course have money, and I have infrastructure, and I have IT, and I have contracts, but really the people is the only thing I really have to put all of those things into service of our business and our results. And if those people are nominally diverse and our organization is nominally accessible, but we're not embedding the ability to get the best out of that diversity into our culture and our decision making, the same way we would build financial discipline or a procurement practice. Like it has to exist at the core of an organization, equal to those other tools. What we can see with COVID is it'll be the first to go. So that's what I mean by saying it needs to be institutionalized in the best sense of that word, so it becomes part of the very fabric of the business and the organization. That's what makes it resilient. That's what allows it to contribute efficiently, and that's what allows an organization's performance to really excel as a result of that component.
Okay, well, you know what? Last one, because I know we're running low on time.
Sure.
This is a loaded one. This is a big one. So
yeah, okay.
Get ready. So
I'm ready.
There's all these different facets of inclusion in terms of societal inclusion. So there's stuff like there's universal design, there's accessibility when it comes to build spaces, there's digital accessibility, and there's also inclusive hiring practices. In your experience, like what kind of ties all of those things together?
In my experience, from a business context, as a CEO of a business, the thing that ties those things together would be the purpose of our business. So we need to bring each of those aspects of accessibility and inclusion into our business and embed it in our culture and institutionalize it in the way that I talked about. If we are going to ensure that those people, those employees, hopefully those leaders in our organization, actually have the support and the platform to be included and belong and participate. And so it's not enough to have an accessible building. It's not enough to have diverse hiring. It's not enough you need all three of those things. Depending on your business, you need them probably in different quantums. A tech company is obviously going to have a different need for accessible technology than maybe another kind of business or another kind of, but I really can't emphasize enough. We know as business leaders how to look at, if you were to ask me, well, how do you see technology? Is technology about efficiency? Is technology about communications? Is technology? So we know how to embrace topics and embed them in our business. That the opportunity here is to treat accessibility and inclusion the same way, because again, sort of the same message in my experience. if it doesn't hold equal power in an organization, then it won't achieve the benefit that I clearly have experienced and see the potential for it to achieve.
Tamara, we'd like to thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us. Yeah, we've been sort of chasing you for a while, I know, and trying to make it happen. But we'd love to talk to you again sometime when we have a little bit more time.
Yeah, thanks very much, and I really appreciate your perseverance and tenacity. I love your thoughtful questions, including the direct ones, and I look forward to our future engagement. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. I always learn a lot when I do these as well. So thanks for that.
Awesome. Yeah, anytime. We'll reach out again.
All right. Thank you.
Look at that, Ryan. You're tenacious.
No, not really.
Oh.
They were very willing, but she was at Vancity for 9 years, and I think it was just in July here, a couple months ago, where she was transitioning over to the Vancouver International Airport. So there was a bit of a let's get Tamara in and settled first before she came on the show.
Yeah.
So that's why there was a bit of a delay, but.
Then yeah, for sure. And I mean, coming into YVR during COVID, I'm sure is probably a lot on our plate. So that's really interesting. What really struck me about that the aspect that I really didn't think of was sort of the altering of the workplace culture that needs to happen along with bringing in like inclusive hiring practices. I mean, you can't just sit somebody down and be like, hey, here's your laptop, here's JAWS, here's your Braille display, go. Like there's a lot more to it than that, and I really hadn't really given that much thought. Yeah,
it's that keyword she used, that sense of belonging, right? That sense of community, feeling like you're part of something, and not just a employee getting a paycheck and going home. There's a lot of value in that.
And there is also there's a little bit of a learning curve for somebody who's say an able-bodied employee to be in a cubicle now next to somebody who's say blind. They have to learn how to work together and what's acceptable and what's not. And so there's a whole education piece along to that as well. And as a large company, I mean, you kind of have to manage that. You have to have a system in place to address that.
Yeah, and I think we're getting there. For years and years and years, there was talk of sensitivity training around what we're talking about: inclusivity, diversity, racism, all that sort of stuff. And we've been talking about education over and over and over again. And it sounds like at least the larger companies are standing up and taking notice and doing the right thing.
Yeah. But I also, I certainly appreciated the honesty about the fact that, when we had to lay off people, these inclusive hiring practices, those were sort of the first things to fall victim of that. And that's not okay. And, and she addressed that and said there is a lot more work to be done. So it's so thought provoking. It's, on the one hand, you think that inclusive hiring is just a no-brainer and it's very easy for a company to do. But between talking to Tamara and looking at this Microsoft article, you kind of see that these are big issues to address, and there is a lot of work to be done if it's going to be done right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting her back on the show, and if it's not a year from now, 2 years from now, because like she said, and if you listen to some of her YouTube videos and read her Wikipedia page, there's going to be some changes at YVR, and it's going to be really interesting to touch base with her again and just look back and see how far they've come. Yeah, it'll be great to have her on when she has a little bit more time. We could have talked for an hour, of course, because we're blabbermouths, but well, there's lots to talk about.
Yeah, we didn't actually talk about the airport.
I know. Yeah. Yep. Well, next time. Hey, Steve.
Yeah, Rob.
I heard a rumor that there's some sort of a virtual pub night going on.
There is indeed a virtual pub night going on. We have been running a virtual pub night on Thursdays at 5 o'clock Pacific. That's 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We've been doing them for a few months now. And if people want to join us on the virtual pub night, it's done by Zoom meeting. They are most welcome to join in. All you got to do is go to the Canadian Assistive Technology webpage. That's www.canasstech.com, CANASSTECH.com. And right down the bottom of that page, there is a sign up link. If you sign up on there, you will start to get notifications about the pub night. And also our Tuesday, we run a Tuesday anti-gloom Zoom room, just for people to, kind of relax and chat with some folks and not get all insular and stuff. Those happen at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesdays. So that's 1 o'clock Eastern, I believe. So yeah, you could get notices about that as well. So we would love to see more folks on both the pub night and the anti-gloom Zoom room.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. We get people from all over the world. Anybody's invited. So,
yeah, we've had we've got Texas. We've got a couple folks down in the States now.
Yeah.
Didn't we? We had somebody from overseas somewhere too, didn't we?
I don't remember. And there's usually trivia, so if you enjoy playing trivia, definitely join the virtual pub night.
Yes, we have our trivia master, David, who shows up time to time to do trivia, although I just got notice he's moving and he won't be joining us this week. But maybe by the time this podcast airs, he will be done with the moving. No, he won't, because he'll be in the middle of the move then too. So probably the next couple of weeks, no trivia, but you never know.
Excellent. And not only that, they could meet one of us.
That's right. We need to do an AT Banter Q&A show. A live Q&A.
Live Q&A.
We'll throw it out to our lists. Broadcast it on Twitter, Facebook. Let people know we're doing it such a date. Come and ask AT Banter questions.
I'm sure there are many questions that are burning in people's minds.
I'm sure there are. You might be surprised.
I'm already afraid.
That would be awesome. We're doing it. Stay tuned for next week's show. We'll announce the date.
Oh, okay. Well, we were locked in now.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm calling it.
No pressure. And with that,
I'm scared.
is going to about do it for us this week. Stay tuned next week, and we can talk about what scares us, including this thing.
That's right. AT Banter Live.
Yes. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening in. Big thanks, of course, to Tamara Vrooman. And we will see everybody next week.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canasstech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com. Or call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840 or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com.